What's going on, and welcome back. In today's video, we're going to talk about bypassing web application firewalls using 3 techniques. Of course, these are not all the techniques you can use to bypass web application firewalls. This is a very broad topic and it needs multiple videos to talk about. But first, let's talk about the 3 techniques and how can we apply them. The first one is using escape characters. Most of you heard about escape characters, such as we can use the backslash. And how can we use these escape characters, by the way? Say you have a URL, and there is in the URL there is a parameter called, say, ID, all right? Question mark ID equal 1, right? So instead of 1, I can what I can do, I can look for 3 kind of vulnerabilities. The first one is LFI. I try to access local files on the server. I try to append files from my server using remote file inclusion, and I can try command injection, right? So whenever I see ID equal 1 or page equal 1, whenever I see a chance to change or manipulate parameters, these 3 vulnerabilities come to mind all the time. So what about this one? So how about if you tried, instead of 1, you tried issuing a command such as ID, but the server didn't respond, and you tried and went on using single quote ID, and the server didn't respond with anything. This means that there is an application firewall in place. So one of the methods we can use to bypass application firewalls, it doesn't work all the time. It depends on the scenario. So instead of 1, what we can do here, we can type, for example, say I want to see the contents of the password file. I use the escape character. So ID equal, let me remove this one and rewrite this. So you have question mark ID. So instead of 1, I can do here, I can type cat, right, to display the contents. Between every letter, I can type or escape the letters with backslash. So cat, backslash cat, and then you append the path. So the path will be like this, etc, right? And then you have 1 backslash et, 1 backslash etc, and then password, and you continue on, right? So that's one way to bypass application firewalls, simply because the escape character is used to bypass the filters. So basically we can use escape characters, and sometimes you might need to append single quote here, right? And then you type the command such as cat etc, and you use backslash between the letters. Or instead of that, what we can do, you can say single quotes and a space here, and then you proceed to type your command cat escape the first character, and then cat, and then you continue on typing the path. It actually depends on the filter itself. So some filter are configured to block certain characters, such as /, double quotes, dot. It all depends on the scenario. So that's one method you can try with the backslash, and also you can try with single quotes and spaces between the commands that you're trying to inject. Another method is using empty shell variables. So what is an empty shell variable? An empty shell variable looks like the following. So you have the $, and you have curly brackets. Between the curly brackets, you have a variable that doesn't exist. For example, empty. All right. So this is a shell variable that doesn't actually exist. We can use that in the same fashion we use the backslash. We can use it between the letters as an escape mechanism to bypass the firewalls. And the third method is using the mechanism of changing user agents. So normally when you send a HTTP request to a server, it knows your user agent, such as Mozilla. An example of your user agent, it could be Chrome. Some application firewalls are configured to block access to certain pages based on the user agent. So for example, if your user agent is Mozilla, you will be given 4 or 3, forbidden to access the page. If your user agent is Chrome, you will be given, say, 301, to be redirected to another page. If your user agent only matches a specific value, such as curl, you will be given 200 code, which means the page will be returned successfully. Now let's talk about all of that and apply it in a scenario. from a machine in HackTheBox called FluxCapacitor. So let's jump right to it. All right, so there you go. Let's go and access the page itself. So once we access the page, you see we get this response. Okay, node 1 alive, FluxCapacitor, and information about the machine itself. Now, as with every time, you're going to launch directory search and look for directories. You will find that there is a directory called sync. If you try to access sync, you see it's saying 403 forbidden, and it's here displaying the type of software used for the web server along with the version. So you might be telling me, let's go ahead and search for an exploit for this version. Yes, this is very correct methodology. You can do that whenever you do a pen testing, but as we do all the time, we try to save our time and not waste it in attempts that won't work. So what's going to happen here? As you can see, it's 403. Let's catch the request with Perp Suite. Turn on proxy, go to Perp Suite, intercept is on, and we resend the request. As you can see, this is the request. Host, user agent, accept, encoding, connection. If you forward now, you see we get the 403. All right, let's now relaunch the request. And again, instead of the user agent Mozilla, I'm going to type nothing here. Forward. And we get a totally different response. This is the current time, by the way, 2022, etc. 0843. So what happened here is that when we changed the user agent, we got totally different response simply because there is a filtering mechanism happening either by the firewall or in the web server configuration to block certain user agents from accessing the page. This is very common, and that's one method to bypass it. All right, so you can do that, by the way, with curl -v -a. This is an example, by the way. Let me cancel this to sync. Yes, so with curl, we define -v for repository, take a look at the requests, and -a to change user agent. We put here our desired user agent and we send it to the desired page. This is the request and this is the response. As you can see, totally different response. Take a look at the headers here. You see we have server equal super WAF. This is very clear that the server is using application firewall. So that's one method of bypassing it. Of course, using nothing might not work in regular scenarios. They use whitelist, right? So they block everything. They block Mozilla, Chrome, and they only allow certain user agents. So in that case, we need to know what are these user agents and then use them in our requests. That's totally different scenario. But here they use blacklist. That's why this worked. The blacklist included Mozilla and the Chrome, so that it returned 403 error when it finds that you are using these user agents which are included in the blacklist. So the method is to use something not in the blacklist. It could be nothing, it could be anything. All right, so now we know that when we change user agent, we got access to this page and we got totally different response. So what happens now is that what we're going to do here, as you can see, /sync, and /sync, it seems that it's trying to sync something, right? And the thing is, it's trying to sync time. So maybe there could be a parameter here, ID equals something. Based on that parameter, it's retrieving the actual response. So what if there is a parameter and by changing the value of the parameter, we might get totally different response here, totally different time. So it's very clear that there is a parameter here. We need to find out what it is. So for that, we're going to use WP fuzz. So we scroll down and we type WP fuzz, and here is the command. There you go. So -c -z to select or to opt for colored input, output, -z to use file. The file that we would like to use is per parameter names. We would like to brute force parameter names. We want to find out if the sync page here is associated with a parameter name we can control. Apparently it is associated actually from the kind of output. Then user agent, I changed the user agent here to avoid getting 404, 403, and then the URL. So the URL here, I put the page, /sync, and then I put here the word fuzz to indicate that I would like to conduct the testing of the URL parameters in here instead of the word fuzz. I use test here as a word or as a value to test the response of the application. And here I have 19, I don't know why, so let me cancel the 19 and filter for 403 responses. So we got 200. All right, let's filter all, rule out all of these responses. So 200. Apparently, not all these parameters actually indicate something, right? Too many parameters, the same character, the same number of words, the same number of lines. Apparently, there is nothing in here. So we try to rule out these parameters with by filtering out the response code 200 and using 403 as an example, of course. So that's HC to filter 200 response codes. So we have here one hit opt as a parameter and it gives 403. Let's go to the browser and turn off the proxy here and type opt equal 1. So as you can see, 403 forbidden. Although if you remember, we tried with a different user agent, still we got 403. This is interesting, but not more interesting than the possibility of conducting command injection in here. So we discovered a valid parameter, opt, right? Right now we want to control what are the possible ways to inject this parameter with command injection. So let's go back and minimize this one. So what we can do here, we can use curl here. So question mark opt equal, say ID, right? See what's the response here. We typed ID and we got this response. So ID didn't work. You try ID with single quote and also didn't work. You can also try ID space, didn't work. You can try also to enclose the single quote for the ID command, and this worked. So what worked here is that we use the space. The space is not blacklisted in the application firewall. That's why when we issued single quote space ID, the command worked. You can also try something like that. Who am I? Who am I? And it gives you who we are. This is nobody. All right, so what happens now? We fire up nc-lvp 4545. What's gonna happen, guys, is this. Let me also open a new tab here and ifconfig to find my IP. Where is my IP? This is my IP. And here we're gonna generate a payload. So let me tell you what's gonna happen. We're gonna generate a payload here, right? Using MSF Venom. Host the payload in the web server and then download the payload using the command injection we got. So why not we use directly some sort of netcut or revert shell and directly connect to the port 4545? Simply because these kind of revert shells contain all the blacklisted characters by the current firewall, Super WAF, including the slashes and the dots. They're not gonna work. The only method is we create our own payload here using MSF Venom, sudo MSF Venom. So here it is. I use a simple Linux payload. Okay, create this payload. I think it is created from yesterday since I attempted this challenge yesterday, ls. So here is shell. And then I'm gonna host it on my web server, sudo python 3-m http server. All right, so it's ready to be run. However, if I try to retrieve this payload from the web server, I need to include the forward slashes here, which, as I said earlier, it's not going to work since the forward slashes, the columns are all blocked by the web application firewall here. So I cannot include them in the command, in this command here, right? As a value or instead of who am I. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to rename shell. So let me check here if I have it. Yeah. So rm shell, and you're going to rename move shell to index HTML. So why am I doing this, and why I'm renaming the payload to index HTML? The reason is this: because I can't use the forward slashes, and since I can't use also columns, I need to download I need only to use the IP address of my web server. Only the IP address. This is the only way I can retrieve the payload, right? And you know that when you access a web server and you don't specify the path, the browser tries to retrieve the index HTML file all the time. This is a default file that is retrieved from all web servers when there is no, there is no path specified in the URL. So if I call out my IP address only of my web server, right? It's gonna retrieve the index.html without the need to specify the forward slash. So this is how it's gonna work. So we go back here. Let's drag this to the right. Oh, space. All right. Then wget. I use one escape character, space, and I type in my IP address. There is a high chance that these dots will be captured and will or caught by the the application firewall, and thus we might be blocked. But let's try. So right now, by calling this, I'm retrieving the index HTML file. So I want to store this in the directory such as temp. Let's see if this works. All right. Let's see. Okay, it didn't work. I might need to, I need to define the port here. So there are certain characters that might be blocked. The first one is the colon. The next one is the dot. And the third one is the forward slash. But since I'm using here single quotes at the start and at the end, and since I'm using escape character here, these characters, we might get away with these characters. So let's try this. Oh, I need to open the server. Okay. So it didn't work. Okay, HTTP. No. All right. Go here. So, nope. Forbidden. I think the characters are being, filtered. So, let's see what we can do. So we have one forward slash, one backslash in the wget. So what if we canceled the HTTP again? So what if we try to change -o to -p to indicate that we want to save that to the directory temp, directory prefix. Let's try this one. Oh, this one worked. All right, so as you can see, the file has been retrieved from my web server. All right, next step now is we give the file permissions to be executed. So now we go back. Let's see what we would like to change here. So the command we need now is chmod. So I'm going to put C and escape that with one backslash plus X, and then temp. The file name is index.html. Let's see here. All right, let's try to execute now. And hopefully it's gonna work. Nope. Aha. So we have dots here. And it do work. So maybe we have a typo in the chmod command here. So instead of index slash, it's going to be index dot. And then we execute index. And it worked. And we received now the connection back to my machine. So right now, let's call the, you know it, stabilize the shell. I hope this vendor won't caught me this time. Yeah, so the file is whitelisted finally. All right, let's see where it is. TTY, use TTY now, and stabilize the shell. What happened here? ID Python 3. All right, so ID, we are nobody now. Right now we are on the road to privileged escalation. So what do we do here? Sudo -l. See what we can do as sudo. So immediately we can run the home, the middle dot monit or monit as root without password. Let's take a look at this. So cat, what is the content of this file? All right, so this is a bash script. What it does, first it enters an if statement, and in the if statement we have a comparison or a condition that says the first argument needs to be equal to CMD. If the first argument equals to CMD, it's gonna do echo trying to execute the second argument. So monit is a bash script that takes two arguments. So if we supply CMD as the first argument, it's gonna enter the if statement. And the if statement can try to execute the second argument, which we need to provide. Let's take a look at what is that argument. CMD equal echo -n argument 2 base64-decode. So what it does, it decodes the next argument, or it does base64 decode on the second argument, bash-c CMD, and executes. All right, so what we can do here, we can provide a next second argument as a value to this one, and we can supply a base64 value. The script will take the base64 value, decode it, and execute it. All right, so what we can do here, we can go to new tab and type echo bin bash base64. So I'm going now to encode bin bash as base64. Supply this as second argument here. So sudo cat home the middle. The first argument we need to provide is CMD. The next argument is our own choice. So paste. This is my choice. What's gonna happen now? It enters the if statement. Yes, there is CMD through the first conditional statement. It makes sure that there is CMD, and then it enters the executes the code. It arrives at this point. At this point, it's gonna decode my provided input through this, and then it's gonna execute it. Since this script is executed as root from here, we can now obtain bin bash as root. Let's try this. No. I made a mistake, which is using cat. So I'm gonna copy that one more time. And only this. ID, and you are the root user. So that was it, guys. I hope you found that informative, and definitely we will see you in the next video.